Lesson 8: Stop complaining. Troubles, like babies, grow larger by nursing. Lady Holland, how do you feel when someone unloads all of his problems and complaints on you? Not very uplifting and energizing, is it? The truth is, nobody likes to be around a complainer except, perhaps, other complainers. Of course, all of us complain at one time or another. The important question is, how often do you complain? If you're wondering whether you complain too much, simply ask your friends, relatives, or co-workers. They'll let you know. Now, when I say complain, I'm not talking about those instances when you discuss your problems in an attempt to search for solutions. That's constructive and commendable. And I'm not referring to those occasions when you share your life experiences, including disappointments, with friends or relatives in the context of bringing them up to date on the latest developments in your life. After all, part of being human is sharing our experiences and supporting each other. Nobody wants to hear about your aches and pains. Maybe a few examples will give you a better idea about the kind of complaining that's counterproductive. One of the most common areas of complaint is the subject of illness. In this category are comments such as "my back is killing me" or "I have a terrible sinus headache." Worse yet, some people get very graphic in explaining the gory details of their particular ailment, such as "I had this green stuff oozing out of my," and doesn't it just make your day when your coworker tells you that he or she is nauseous? Let's face it. What can I possibly do for you if you have a stomachache? I'm not a physician. Go to a doctor if you have a medical problem. More importantly, why are you telling me this? You might want. Self-pity is an acid which eats holes in happiness. Earl Nightingale's sympathy, but all you're doing is dragging me down and reinforcing your own suffering. Talking about pain and discomfort will only bring you more of the same and encourage those around you to look for the exits. When it comes to complaints about illness, the principle of escalation usually rears its ugly head. Here's how it works. You tell your friend about the agony you went through with the flu. Your friend interrupts and says, "You think you had it bad. When I had the flu, I had a 104-degree fever and had to be rushed to the hospital. I almost died." Or, tell someone that your back or foot hurts and count how many seconds it takes for that person to switch the conversation to his or her own back pain and aching feet. Complainers love to play this game. Their pain is always worse than yours. Don't let it rain on your parade. Another favorite complaint area is the weather. It starts to rain and people say, "What a lousy, miserable day. Why does some moisture from the heavens make it a lousy day?" When someone makes that remark to me, I respond, "It's wet out but it's a great day." By associating rain with lousy day, you're programming yourself in a negative way. Furthermore, your complaints about the weather won't change the conditions. It simply makes no sense to get upset about things over which you have no control and which have no significant impact on your life. Finally, there are the petty complaints, such as "the waiter didn't come over to take my order for 5 minutes" or "John got an office with a larger window than I have." Life presents too many difficult challenges for us to get bogged down with silly things like that. And when you gripe about insignificant things, you're also saying something about yourself. If I'm your employer or a member of your team, I'm wondering how you'll react when we really have a problem worth worrying about. He had every reason to complain recently. "I was in my office and thinking about some of the things that weren't going as well as I had planned." You know, the typical business problems, results not happening as fast as I had expected. And I'll confess that I'd been doing a little complaining about it. Then Pedro walked in. Pedro is in his early 20s and came to this country about 6 years ago from Honduras. He works for a company that cleans homes and offices. You talk about a positive attitude. Pedro is one of the most positive people I've ever met, always smiling and upbeat. On this day, however, I asked Pedro about Hurricane Mitch and its impact on his homeland. The smile quickly left his face. He told me of the devastation the hurricane had caused. Thousands of people had died. More than 1 million people were left homeless. Pedro said that his father, mother, and brother still lived in Honduras, and he had no idea if they were dead or alive. He had no way to contact them. All the phone lines in that area had been destroyed. Pedro said he thought about his family every day. Can you imagine the agony of not even knowing if your family is still alive? Then Pedro went on to tell me about all the things he was doing to help the people in Honduras. He was collecting money, clothing, and other necessities. He was actively working with the relief organizations. Instead of just griping about the problem, the secret of happiness is to count your blessings while others are adding up their troubles. William Penn. He was doing whatever he could do to ease their pain. After speaking with Pedro, I began to realize just how inconsequential my own problems were, and how fortunate I am. You better believe I stopped complaining. I faced the rest of the day with renewed energy and a much better attitude. By the way, several weeks later I saw Pedro again. And yes, he had his usual winning smile and his great attitude. The good news is that his family members are all alive. The bad news is that they lost everything in the flood and are now living in a shelter. Clean water is very scarce. Disease is rampant. I can't even fathom what it's like to lose everything you own and have to start over from scratch, especially under these difficult conditions. Can you? There's no doubt about it. Pedro has every reason to whine about his family's bad luck. But he doesn't. He realizes that complaining would be a terrible waste of his time and energy. Thank you, Pedro, for reminding all of us that complaining is not the answer to our challenges in life. Putting things in perspective. There's another valuable lesson that we can learn from Pedro, and that's the importance of keeping things in perspective. Over the years, I've noticed that complainers lack perspective. They tend to blow their problems way out of proportion. Optimistic people with great attitudes, tend to have a sense of what's truly important in life. The dictionary defines perspective as the capacity to reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has plenty, not on your past misfortunes, of which all men have some. Charles Dickens viewed things in their true relation or relative importance. Think about the people you know. Do you have any friends who get bent out of shape because they got a flat tire? And how about those who sever ties with close family members because of a dispute over the seating arrangements at a wedding? It's clear these folks have lost sight of the relative importance of things. I think we can all learn from Eddie Rickenbacker, who drifted in a life raft for 21 days, hopelessly lost in the Pacific. After surviving the ordeal, Rickenbacker said, "If you have all the fresh water you want to drink and all the food you want to eat, you ought never complain about anything." Let me share with you some of the things I'm grateful for. I'm in good health. Dolores is in good health. We have our own home. We have plenty of food to eat and clean water to drink. We live in the United States and enjoy freedom. I love my work. I get to travel and meet fascinating people. I have many loyal friends. I draw strength from my relationship with God. This is just a partial list of the blessings in my life. And you know what? Even with all of these wonderful things, there are times when I start to take some of them for granted. But I've learned to quickly reconnect with these blessings, and it boosts my attitude and brings me right back on course. So, what is it that you've been complaining about lately? Are they really life and death matters? The next time you're tempted to gripe about your problems, pick up a pen and piece of paper and start listing all the reasons you have to be grateful. Let me tell you, it sure beats complaining. Be a source of positive news. I'm not suggesting that you just sit back and ignore all of the problems in your life. However, rather than complaining, it's far better to focus if you're all wrapped up in yourself, you're overdressed. Kate Halverson attention and your energy on those steps you can take to solve, or at least lessen, your problem. For instance, let's say you're feeling a little tired lately. Instead of telling everyone how lousy you feel, make an effort to exercise more regularly or get to bed a little earlier. To review, complaints work against you in 3 ways. First, no one wants to hear negative news about your illness and your problems. Second, complaining reinforces your own pain and discomfort. So why keep replaying painful, negative memories? Third, complaining, by itself, accomplishes nothing and diverts you from the constructive actions you could be taking to improve your situation. It's been said that 90% of the people don't care about your problems, and the other 10% are glad you have them. Seriously though, all of us can cut down on our complaining. From now on, let's do ourselves and others a favor and make our conversations uplifting. The people who don't complain very much, and those who speak positively, are a joy to be around. Decide to join that group so people won't have to cross the street when they see you coming. Part 3. Heaven helps those who act. Nothing happens by itself. It all will come your way once you understand that you have to make it come your way, by your own exertions. Ben Stein Lesson 9. Associate with positive people. A mirror reflects a man's face, but what he is really like is shown by the kind of friends he chooses. The Living Bible, Proverbs 27. In high school, Mike spent a lot of time with a bunch of guys in his neighborhood. According to Mike, these guys just liked to sit on the front porch and watch cars go by. They had no goals and no dreams. They were always negative. Whenever Mike suggested they do something new, the others would discourage him. It's stupid or not cool, they told him. Mike just went along with them, so he could remain part of the group. When Mike went off to college, he still ran into some negative people. But he also met people who were positive, who wanted to learn, who wanted to achieve things. Mike decided to spend his time with the positive people. Almost immediately, Mike started to feel much better about himself. He developed a great attitude. He began to set goals. And I'm happy to tell you Mike now runs his own successful video production company and has a wonderful family. One by one, he is accomplishing all of the goals he has set. When I asked Mike what happened to his high school friends, he told me, they still live in the same neighborhood. They're still negative. And they're still doing nothing with their lives. Mike added, I'd never be where I am now if I kept hanging out with those guys. I'd still be at the corner deli playing pinball. Mike's story is a great reminder about the influence authors have on our lives. And yet sometimes we get in the habit of being with certain people and we just don't think about the consequences. Have you ever heard the axiom, tell me who you hang out with and I'll tell you who you are? There's a lot of wisdom in that simple statement. Have you given much thought to how this principle has been molding and shaping your life? Think back to when you were growing up. Do you remember how concerned our parents were about who we hung out with? Our mom or dad wanted to meet our friends and know all kinds of details about them. Why? Our parents knew that we'd be greatly influenced by our friends, that we'd tend to pick up some of their habits, and that we'd probably do the things our friends were doing. Our parents were concerned for good reason. And I'll bet that if you have children, you closely watch their friends because of the impact these youngsters will have on your children. Toxic people and nourishing people. In today's literature, we see the terms toxic people and nourishing people. As you might expect, toxic people are the ones who always dwell on the negative. The dictionary defines toxic as poisonous. Toxic people continually spew their verbal poison. In contrast, the dictionary definition of nourishing is to promote the growth of. Nourishing people are positive and supportive. They lift your spirits and are a joy to be around. Toxic people will always try to drag you down to their level. They hammer away at you with all of the things you can't do and all of the things that are impossible. They barrage you with gloomy statements about the lousy economy, the problems in their life, the problems soon to be in your life, and the terrible prospects for the future. If you're lucky, they might even throw in a few words about their aches and pains. After listening to toxic people, you feel listless and drained. We become part of what we are around. Unknown motivational speaker Leigh Brown refers to these people as dream killers. Psychologist Jack Canfield describes them as energy vampires because they suck all the positive energy out of you. Have you ever been with a negative person and felt as if that individual were physically taking energy from you? I think we've all had that experience many times. One thing is certain, spend time with toxic people and their negative messages will wear you down. On the other hand, how do you feel when you're around people who are positive, enthusiastic, and supportive? You're energized and inspired. There's something truly amazing about positive people. They seem to have a positive energy that lights up a room. When you're around them, you start to pick up their attitude and you feel as if you have added strength to vigorously pursue your own goals. When I think about positive people, my friend John Leasy immediately comes to mind. Whenever I speak with John, I feel like I can conquer the world. John is simply the most positive person you could ever meet. I like to think of myself as a very positive person. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most positive, I'd probably give myself a 9.5. I'd have to give John Leasy a 14. He's just off the charts. He's always positive, always enthusiastic. And he gives a tremendous lift to everyone who crosses his path. His attitude inspires people to greatness. Can you see how your attitude might improve if you had a friend like John in your life? Those silly songs on the radio, I'm sure it has happened to you many times. You hear a song on the radio, and you say to yourself, what a ridiculous song. Later that day, you hear the same song again. The following day, you hear that song a few more times. As the song climbs the charts, you can't get away from it. You hear it several times each day for a week. Then something incredible happens. You're sitting at home and all of a sudden, you start to hum or sing that silly song. If, at that very moment, I were to ask you what you think of the song, you'd tell me, it's horrible. Then why on earth are you singing it? The reality is, whatever you hear over and over will be at the forefront of your consciousness. As you also know, once that song becomes less popular, and isn't played as frequently on the radio, you'll tend to think about it, and sing it to yourself, much less often. There's an important lesson: your friends will stretch your vision, or choke your dreams. Unknown son here. The mind tends to dwell upon whatever is repeated over and over. Unfortunately, the mind doesn't discriminate between messages that are good for us and those that are harmful. If we hear something often enough, we will tend to believe it, and act upon it. Just as a song repeated many times will get us thinking about that song, so too will repeated thoughts about success get us thinking about success. So if we'll make sure to fill our mind with positive messages, we're going to be more positive and move forward boldly to achieve our goals. The more positive reinforcement, the better. And where can we get this positive reinforcement? Well, one way is to read motivational books. Congratulations, because you're doing that right now. In addition, we can listen to motivational tapes and spend lots of time with positive people. Smokey's sponge theory. I've learned a lot about attitude and the importance of surrounding myself with positive people from my friend Glenn Smokey Stover. Smokey worked in sales for 45 years in the cemetery and funeral home industry. While this may sound like a gloomy field, let me assure you that Smokey is a positive dynamo. Every time I get off the phone with Smokey, I feel terrific. Smokey explained to me that human beings are like sponges, we soak up whatever people around us are saying. So, if we spend time with someone who's negative, we sponge up the negatives and it affects our attitude. Of course, the reverse is also true. When we hang around positive people, we soak up the positive. We feel better, and perform better. I once asked Smokey, "What do you do if you're speaking with a negative person?" He said, "I get away from that person as soon as I can. I'll say something like, 'Gosh, it's been good to see you, Charlie,' and I move on to another person." Then I asked Smokey, "Did you ever have a friend who was negative?" "Not for very long," he said. Well put, Smokey. Evaluate your friendships. It's crucial that you evaluate your friendships from time to time, even those you've maintained for many years. Trust me, this isn't a minor issue. Those who occupy your time have a significant impact on your most priceless possession, your mind. Are you surrounding yourself with negative friends and spending a lot of time with them in your leisure hours? If so, I'm going to ask you to think about spending much less time with these people, or even no time at all with them. Sounds harsh, doesn't it? After all, I'm suggesting that you limit or eliminate your involvement with some long-standing friends. When I tell people this at my seminars, invariably someone will raise a hand and accuse me of being cold or uncaring. Are the things around you helping you toward success, or are they holding you back? W. Clement Stone audience member will typically say, "Shouldn't we try to help our negative friends instead of dumping them?" Well, you're free to do whatever you think is best, and each situation must be dealt with on its own unique facts. However, I've found that in most cases, hanging around these negative friends doesn't help them, and it doesn't help you, either. Everyone gets dragged down because most negative people don't want to change. They just want someone to listen to their tales of woe. If you have a strong urge to spend time with negative friends, ask yourself, why am I choosing to be with these people? Consciously or unconsciously, you may be choosing to hold yourself back to be less than you are capable of becoming. By the way, I think it's wonderful to try to help someone overcome their negativity. But if you've been trying for several years, and aren't getting anywhere, maybe it's time to move on. Let me clarify one important point. I'm not making a judgment here that negative people are any less worthy than other people. I'm saying there are consequences if you spend time with people who are negative. What are the consequences? You'll be less happy and less successful than you could be. Toxic relatives. What do you do if you happen to have toxic relatives? Obviously, this is a touchy issue. What I'm going to suggest is that you don't turn your back on your family. Bears. Family ties are precious, and I think we must make every effort to maintain harmonious family relationships. Even so, I recommend that you put some controls in place that reduce the impact your toxic relatives have on your life. You're not abandoning them or refusing to speak with them, but you are putting some limits on your involvement with them. For example, if you have negative relatives, I suggest that you don't go out of your way to call them on the phone several times each day if you know they're going to put you down or criticize your every move. What good can possibly come from that? We get bombarded with enough negativity as it is. Just turn on the radio or TV or read a newspaper. Do we need our relatives to provide even more negative news? I don't think so. And here's another suggestion that will work equally well whether you're talking with a friend or a relative. When the discussion moves to a negative subject, resist the temptation to accuse the other person of being negative. That will usually make things even worse. Instead, gently shift the conversation to a more positive topic. Remember that I'm not asking you to disown your relatives or refuse to attend family functions. This is about limiting your contacts with negative relatives so you don't get dragged down to their level. Positive people in the workplace. Just about every organization has some negative people working there. And sometimes you have to interact and work alongside these people. But don't go out of your way to spend time with these prophets of gloom and doom. For instance, if you frequently have lunch with negative people at work, stop having lunch with them. All they're doing is filling your mind with negativity. You can't perform at your best if you allow these people to dump their negative garbage into your good friends are good for your health. Dr. Erwin Saracen Mind. There's no need to be nasty or to tell them off. You should be able to find a diplomatic way of distancing yourself from this poisonous group. Instead, take charge. Be proactive. Make it a point to eat at your desk, to take a client out to lunch, or to sit at a different table in the cafeteria. Do whatever you have to do to make lunch a positive experience. Make no mistake about it. Positive people are well in any organization, and negative people are hurting their chances for advancement. The problem of negative workers has gotten so bad that I recently got a brochure in the mail announcing a full-day seminar entitled How to Legally Fire Employees with Attitude Problems. The business community is waking up to the fact that when it comes to productivity in the workplace, attitude is everything. Choose your friends wisely, as I said at the beginning of this lesson. Tell me who you hang out with and I'll tell you who you are. If you're serious about getting a raise or a promotion at work, succeeding in your own business, or improving yourself as a human being, then you have to start associating with people who can take you to the next level. As you increase your associations with nourishing people, you'll feel better about yourself and have renewed energy to achieve your goals. You'll become a more positive, upbeat person, the kind of person others love to be around. I used to think it was important to associate with positive people and to limit involvement with negative people. Now, I believe it's essential if you want to be a high achiever and a happy individual. So, surround yourself with positive, nourishing people. They'll lift you up the ladder of success. Lesson 10. Confront your fears and grow. Do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. Ralph Waldo Emerson. As I sat in the audience listening to motivational speak Gil Eagles, little did I know that one sentence was about to change my life. Gil Eagles gave a marvelous presentation that day. He had many valuable things to say. But there was one line, one absolute gem that stands out. Here's what he said: if you want to be successful, you must be willing to be uncomfortable. I'll never forget those words. And Gil was right on the money. To achieve your goals and realize your potential, you must be willing to be uncomfortable, to do things that you're afraid to do. That's how you develop your potential. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? And yet, what do most people do when they face a frightening situation or new activity? They back away from the fear. They don't take action. I know, because that's what I did for the first 30 years of my life. And I can tell you without hesitation that it's a losing strategy. Show me a successful person and I'll show you someone who confronts his or her fears and takes action. Examining our fears. Have you ever been afraid or anxious before trying a new or challenging activity? Has that fear ever stopped you from taking action? I'm sure you've been paralyzed by fear at one time or another in your life. I know I have. That's simply part of being human. Of course, every person has a different fear threshold. What frightens one person to death might have little impact on someone else. For example, to some, speaking in public or starting a new business, nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Marie Curie is scary. Others might be fearful about asking someone for directions, or for a date. Regardless of how trivial or silly you believe your fears may be, this lesson applies to you. When I talk about fear, I'm not referring to physical risks that might injure you or endanger your health, such as diving off cliffs in Acapulco or bungee jumping. I'm scared of those things, too, and I have no plans to do either of them. What I'm talking about here are those challenges that stand in the way of your personal and professional growth. These are the things that scare you but which you know are necessary if you're going to get what you want in life. The comfort zone. When you're gripped by fear and anxiety, it's usually because you're stepping out of your comfort zone. Let's take some time to discuss this important concept and how it relates to your success and the development of your potential. Each of us has a comfort zone, a zone of behavior that is familiar to us and where we feel comfortable and safe. Think of your comfort zone as the inside of a circle. X, terrified, X, slightly afraid. The activities and situations that lie inside the circle are non-threatening and familiar. They're routine, part of your everyday life, the things you can do with no sweat. In this category are tasks such as speaking to your friends or coworkers or filling out the daily paperwork at your job. However, you occasionally face experiences or challenges that are outside your comfort zone. These are represented by the X's in the diagram above. The farther the X is from the circle, the more afraid you are to participate in that activity. When faced with something outside your comfort zone, you suddenly feel nervous. Your palms become sweaty and your heart pounds. You begin to wonder, will I be able to handle it? Will others laugh at me? What will my friends and relatives say? As you look at the diagram above, what does the X represent for you? In other words, what fear is holding you back from reaching the next level of success or fulfillment in your life? Is it fear of approaching new prospects? Is it fear about changing careers? Is it fear about learning new skills? Is it fear of going back to school? Is it fear of telling other people what's on your mind? Is it fear of public speaking? Whatever that X represents for you, just be honest and admit it. My guess is that thousands, if not millions, of people have the very same fear you have. In fact, let's take a closer look at what most people are afraid of. The most common fears during many of my presentations, I distribute index cards to the audience members and ask them to write down, anonymously, the fears that are standing in the way of their professional and personal growth. Then, I collect the cards and read them aloud. What do you think people write on those index cards? In most audiences, regardless of profession or geographical location, the same answers come up again and again. Here are some of the most common fears they identify: public speaking or giving presentations. In virtually every group, this is the number one fear. The vast majority of people are terrified about speaking in front of a group of people. Hearing the word no or having their ideas rejected. This response is very common among salespeople, especially those who make cold calls. Changing jobs or starting their own business. Over the years, I've noticed that more and more people are listing this fear. We have a lot of unhappy workers in corporate America today, and they yearn for a more satisfying work environment, but they're afraid to do anything about it. Telling managers or executives negative news, what the managers or executives don't want to hear. This one is self-explanatory. Talking to people in upper management. Many entry-level workers and even managers are terrified about speaking to executives in the company. They even hesitate to make small talk with the president or CEO of their organization for fear they'll say something silly or appear stupid. Fear of failure. Those who won't try something new for fear that it won't work out. We'll tackle this issue in more depth in Lesson 11. Well, are you surprised by any of the fears on this list? Do you have any of them now or have you had them in the past? The truth is, the overwhelming majority of people experience these fears at some point in their lives. And if you have some fears that weren't on this list, don't worry about it. You are stronger than any of your fears, and you can overcome them. The benefit of backing away from your fears when confronted with an anxiety-producing event, most people will retreat to avoid the fear and anxiety. That's what I used to do. You see, backing away does relieve the fear and anxiety that would have resulted if you followed through with the activity. For instance, if someone asks you to make a presentation within your company, and you decline, you save yourself the sleepless nights you'd have worrying about it, and the nervousness you'd experience in the days leading up to the presentation. In fact, I've found that's the one and only benefit you get by retreating, a momentary avoidance of anxiety. Think about it for a moment. Can you list any other benefits that people get when they refuse to confront their fears? I've asked that question of thousands of people, and nobody has been able to come up with any additional benefits. For good reason, there are none. The price you pay now, I want you to seriously consider the price you pay when you back away from those fears that are standing in the way of your growth. Here's what happens: your self-esteem is lowered. You feel powerless and frustrated. You sabotage your success. You lead an uneventful, boring life. Is this a price worth paying for the short-term avoidance of fear and anxiety? Most of us are indeed willing to pay this dear price, simply to avoid temporary discomfort and possible ridicule from others. Trust me folks, this is insane. In the long run, retreating is not the best way to handle your problem. You'll never be highly successful or develop your talents to the fullest unless you're willing to confront your fears. My high school strategy: when I was in high school, I was pretty shy and didn't feel very good about myself. But I was never rejected when it came to asking someone for a date. If you were looking at me now, you'd probably be thinking, he's not bad looking, but he's certainly no Tom Cruise. My strategy was really quite simple. I never asked anyone out on a date. You see, I wasn't he who loses wealth loses much, he who loses a friend loses more, but he who loses courage loses all. Miguel de Cervantes. Going to let anyone reject me. And what did I accomplish? I felt horrible about myself. I knew that I had wimped out. I felt powerless, and as you can imagine, I didn't have a full social calendar. I was sabotaging my success. Because I refused to face my fear, I remained in the background while most of my friends and classmates went out on dates. How do you think that made me feel? Pretty lousy, just as you'd expect. In case you're wondering, I did have a few dates during that period of my life, but only when other people arranged them. I wasn't going to allow anyone to say no to me. In reality, I was saying no to myself. Can you see how my strategy of backing away from my fears worked against me? Now it's true that if I had asked some people for a date in high school, a few of them might have said no. But you know what? I wouldn't have died. I could have asked another person, and another, and eventually I would have gotten a yes. It wasn't until college that I began to take some baby steps to confront this fear of rejection. Little by little, I gained more confidence. And in law school, I had the good fortune to meet Dolores, and we've been married for 18 years. A new life. I'm really no different from you. I have my fears, just as you do. And when I look back at the first 30 years of my life, you know what I see? I see someone who achieved some degree of success as an attorney. But I also see someone who was shy, insecure, scared and self-conscious. Does that sound to you like someone who's a motivational speaker? What turned my life around, and improved it a millionfold, is that I learned to confront my fears and take action. I realized after years of frustration and disappointments that hiding from my fears wasn't getting me anywhere, and it would never get me anywhere. Of course, I wouldn't have confronted my fears if I had first developed a positive attitude. A can-do attitude provided me with the extra push I needed to take action. When you believe you can do something, you have the courage to move forward despite being afraid. Armed with a great attitude, I decided to become a participant in life and to explore my potential, even though I was scared. From the very beginning, I felt so much better about myself. I had taken control of my life, and all sorts of possibilities opened up for me. Are you beginning to see the incredible rewards you can receive when you're willing to develop a positive attitude and confront your fears? Reframe the situation. If I could give you a way to confront uncomfortable situations without fear or anxiety, you'd be ecstatic and eternally grateful, wouldn't you? Sorry, but there's no such magical solution. I can't wave a magic wand and take away your fears. How then can you muster the courage to do those things that you fear, but which are necessary for your success and growth? The next time you face a scary situation, I suggest you take a different outlook. Most people start thinking, I won't be able to do this well and other people may laugh at me or reject me. They get hung up about how well they're going to perform. Because of these worries, they decide to retreat. While you should always go in with a positive attitude and prepare beforehand to the extent possible, don't be overly concerned with the result. Consider yourself an immediate winner when you take the step and do the thing you fear. That's right. You're a winner just by entering the arena and participating, regardless of the result. Moving forward, even when you're afraid, for instance, let's assume you're afraid to speak in public, but you confront your fear and do it anyway. The moment you get up and speak before the audience, you're a winner. Your knees may be shaking and your voice may be quivering. That doesn't matter. You faced your fear and accepted the challenge. Congratulations are in order. The likely result is that your self-esteem will be enhanced and you'll feel exhilarated. On your first attempt, you won't be hailed as the world's finest speaker. So what? Let's face it. You can't expect to be an accomplished speaker during your first presentation. Were you a great tennis player after your first game? Or a great swimmer the first time you entered the water? Developing any skill takes time. I remember my first motivational speech. That was in 1988. And my performance was nothing to write home about. I gave a free talk to a group of real estate sales people, and let me tell you, I was terrified. I couldn't take my eyes off my notes. Fortunately, the content of my presentation was very solid and the audience responded well. But I had a long way to go before I could call myself a good speaker. On the second presentation, I was a little better. And when I had done 5 or so presentations, I began to rely less and less on my notes, and to develop a stronger connection with the audience. Now, 11 years later, I'm a professional speaker who speaks to thousands of people each year throughout the United States. But let's not forget that it all started with a scared guy who gave a very unimpressive talk in 1988. She followed her dream. I'd like to tell you a story about a woman who knows a lot about breaking out of a comfort zone. Her name is Dottie Berman, and for 32 years Dottie was a high school English teacher in New York. Yet, since the age of 10, she wanted to go into show business. She never gave it serious thought as a career and instead chose the security of teaching, with its regular paycheck and benefits. The only way to escape from the prison of fear is action. While working as a teacher, Dottie began to write songs and perform them. It was just a hobby, but it kept her dream alive. Then, in the late 1980s, Dottie made a decision. She would retire from teaching and pursue a new career as a performer. In the summer of 1988, she submitted her resignation. Then the terror really hit her. She was so scared about venturing into the unknown that she withdrew her resignation and went back to teaching. But something inside Dottie wouldn't let her dream die. 6 months later, in January of 1989, she confronted her fear and retired. At the time, Dottie was in her 50s. In 1992, Dottie developed and performed her own one-woman musical show. The show was based on her fears of leaving a secure teaching job to go into show business. And in the spring of 1998, Dottie, now in her 60s, released her marvelous CD, I'm in Love with My Computer, a collection of witty, inspirational songs. She also performed these songs in a musical revue in a cabaret in New York City and continues to present her programs of original songs and stories in theaters and cabarets, as well as for organizations throughout the country. Dottie will be the first to admit that her career transition has been filled with challenges and setbacks. But has it been worth it? According to Dottie, I've never been happier in my life. Bravo, Dottie, for confronting your fears, and inspiring us to follow our dreams. Running away from your fears is a losing strategy. Jeff Keller, Just Do It. Ralph Waldo Emerson offered some simple advice, which, if followed, can transform your life. He said, "Do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain." I know this advice makes good sense, but some people are just too afraid to act. Remember my prior words about the steep price you pay when you let your fears dominate you. In the end, running away from your fears is a losing strategy. It will only bring you frustration and unhappiness. I can tell you that from personal experience. There's nothing wrong with having some fears. Successful people have fears. The difference is that successful people take action and move forward despite being afraid. It's not always easy, I'll grant that. But you'll always feel better about yourself when you face your fears. In the last 14 years, I've had the privilege of traveling throughout the United States and abroad, and of speaking with thousands of people. During all this time, I haven't met one person who confronted his or her fears, took action, and later regretted it. Not a single one. But I've met many people who tell me how much they regret backing away from their fears and letting their dreams die. As my friend Burke Hedges often says, don't be one of those who lets his regrets take the place of his dreams. So, stretch yourself. Confront your fears and be willing to expand your comfort zone. The courage muscle can be developed just like any other muscle with exercise. And when you do an activity outside your comfort zone a few times, you know what happens. That same activity becomes part of your comfort zone. There's another bonus when you're willing to expand your comfort zone. When you push through fear and take action in some areas of your life, you'll develop confidence in other areas, as well. It's true. As I became more comfortable as a speaker, I also became a better salesman, a better businessman, a better listener, the list goes on and on. You can try to dance around it all you want. But you won't develop your abilities to the fullest unless you're willing to be uncomfortable. Life doesn't reward those who refuse to expose themselves to difficulties and challenges. It's important that you put yourself in a position to win, and that means taking action despite fear. Confront your fears, and you're on the way to developing your potential and leading the exciting, fulfilling life you deserve. It's a decision you'll never regret. Lesson 11: Get out there and fail. Failure is only the opportunity to more intelligently begin again. Henry Ford. She couldn't pay her credit card bills for 26 years. She moved 25 times looking for work. She was fired 18 times. She worked for 26 years before she earned an annual salary of $22,000. She occasionally lived on food stamps and slept in her car. You're probably thinking, if this is a book about success, why are you droning on and on about a woman who had so many failures? I'll tell you why. The failure described above is well-known TV talk show host Sally Jessy Raphael. You see, despite all of her setbacks, she refused to give up her childhood dream of a career in broadcasting. She was willing to keep failing, and keep failing, until she succeeded. Sally Jessy Raphael has earned millions of dollars and has enjoyed a long and successful TV career. All because she kept a great attitude despite years of failures. In the beginning, how is it that someone like Sally Jessy Raphael can endure 26 years of failure and keep going? If you look back to your own childhood, I think you'll see that you, too, demonstrate tremendous resilience in the face of repeated failures. Remember when you learned how to ride a bicycle? You probably began with training wheels. Eventually, when these crutches were removed, keeping your balance became more difficult. You struggled to stay upright, maybe even falling a few times and scraping yourself. You were learning an important early lesson about failure. As you practiced, it's likely that one of your parents walked beside you shouting instructions, encouraging you and catching you as you lost balance. You were scared, but excited. You looked forward to the time when you would succeed, when you would at last ride free on your own. So you kept at it every day, and eventually mastered the skill of riding a bike. What contributed to your ultimate success in learning how to ride your bike? Well, persistence and sheer repetition, certainly. You were going to stick with it no matter how long it took. It also helped that you were enthusiastic about what you set out to achieve, that you could hardly wait to reach your goal. And finally, let's not underestimate the impact of positive encouragement. You always knew your parents were in your corner, supporting you, rooting for your success. As a 6-year-old learning to ride your bike, you were optimistic, thrilled, and eager to meet the challenge. You couldn't wait to try again. You knew you'd master it eventually. But that was a long time ago. Yesterday and today. Now let's examine how most adults approach the development of new skills. Would you say they're optimistic, thrilled, and eager to meet the challenge? We both know the answer to that question is no. Let's assume we asked a group of adults to learn a new software program or to switch to another position in the company. How would most respond? They'd try to avoid it. They'd complain. They'd make excuses why they shouldn't have to do it. They'd doubt their abilities. They'd be afraid. What happened to that 6-year-old brimming with vitality and a sense of adventure? How did that child turn into an adult moaning and groaning about learning something new? As adults, most of us become a lot more concerned about the opinions of others, often hesitating because people may laugh at us or criticize us. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Winston Churchill: at the age of 6, we knew we had to fall off the bike and get back on to learn a new skill. Falling off the bike wasn't a bad thing. But as we got older, we started to perceive falling off as a bad thing rather than an essential part of the process of achieving our goal. As I pointed out in Lesson 10, it can be uncomfortable to try something new, perhaps even scary. But if you take your eyes off the goal and instead focus your attention on how others may be viewing you, you're doing yourself a grave disservice. To develop a new skill or reach a meaningful target, you must be committed to doing what it takes to get there, even if it means putting up with negative feedback or falling on your face now and then. Successful people have learned to fail their way to success. While they may not particularly enjoy their failures, they recognize them as a necessary part of the road to victory. After all, becoming proficient at any skill requires time, effort, and discipline, and the willingness to persevere through whatever difficulties may arise. These failures make millions of dollars. Take the example of a professional baseball player. As it is today, the player who gets just 3 hits in 10 attempts is at the top of his profession, making several $1 million a year. That's a 70% failure rate. And the fans will no doubt taunt him when he strikes out. And speaking of baseball, what a thrill it was to watch Mark McGwire of the St. Louis Cardinals as he hit 70 home runs during the 1998 season. He's such an exciting player. But did you know that Mark McGwire struck out 155 times in 1998? And for his career, the greatest mistake a person can make is to be afraid of making one. Elbert Hubbard McGwire has hit 457 home runs, yet, he has struck out 1,259 times. That's almost 3 times as many strikeouts as home runs. When I ask you to name the best basketball player of all time, who comes to mind? I'm guessing that many of you immediately thought of Michael Jordan. He gets my vote. Let me share with you this statistic. Michael Jordan has a career shooting percentage of 50%. In other words, half of the shots he took in his career were failures. Of course, this principle isn't limited to sports. We also know that show business stars and media personalities are no strangers to failure. Many actors invest 10 or 15 years, enduring hundreds of rejections before landing a part that launches their careers. And then, even after achieving some degree of success, they still experience occasional box office flops. On the night he graduated from college, Jerry Seinfeld did his first comedy gig. It was at a comedy club in New York City. He bombed. When asked to describe that evening, Seinfeld said, "It was pretty horrible. It was a terrible sinking feeling." But he didn't quit. He kept performing his stand-up routine at night. He had 5 very tough years. And then he was invited to appear on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in 1981. He was a big hit, and on his way to an incredibly successful career. In a nutshell, all these individuals realize that success, to a large extent, is a matter of persistence. That is, if you keep trying, keep developing yourself and keep making adjustments along the way, you're going to succeed. You simply need to get enough at-bats, go on enough auditions, visit enough potential clients. Undaunted by failure, I want to tell you about 2 guys who wrote a book containing a collection of inspirational stories. They figured it would take about 3 months to make a deal with a publisher. The first publisher they approached said no. The second publisher said no. The third publisher said no. The next 30 publishers said no. Having racked up 33 rejections over a period of 3 years, what do you think they did? They submitted their book to another publisher. The 34th publisher said yes. And that one yes after 33 failures is what launched the spectacular success of Chicken Soup for the Soul, written and compiled by Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. If you've been in a bookstore in the last 5 years, I'll bet you've seen that book. There's a good chance that you've read one of the books in the Chicken Soup series. The Chicken Soup for the Soul series has sold over 30 million copies. All because Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen had the determination to fail over and over, and to keep going until they succeeded. What sustained Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen through 33 failures? Their attitudes. If these guys had negative attitudes, they would have given up after the first or second rejection, missing out on a pot of gold. But their attitudes remained positive and upbeat failure, after failure, after failure. What's a good attitude worth? In their case, about $10 million a piece, and still counting. No overnight success. Another example of someone who endured years of failure is the phenomenally successful radio host Rush Limbaugh. For years, Rush Limbaugh worked at low-paying jobs and was ridiculed before he made a successful breakthrough. After floundering in radio for 12 years, he was urged to get out of the business. In 1979, his success seems to be largely a matter of hanging on after others have let go. William Feather left the radio industry and spent 5 miserable years in a sales job for which he wasn't suited. In 1983, he returned to radio, and the rest, as we know, is history. So, when you get right down to it, there is no such thing as failure. There are only results, some more successful than others. Failure doesn't mean you've reached the end of the line and that success isn't possible. The only time success is impossible is when you quit. Quitting is final. But continued attempts, with commitment and diligence, can be turned into success. Never give up. In the early 1990s, the owner of a Midwestern company called our office to inquire about my speaking programs, as well as our products and publications. I spoke with him on the phone and promptly sent out some information. When we called to follow up, he'd say that he was thinking about it and hadn't made a decision yet. At the beginning, we called every week. No sale. Then, we called once a month. No sale. For a period of a few years, we kept calling this gentleman. We kept sending him quarterly newsletters and flyers. And all we had to show for it was one failure after another. But in the spring of 1998, a representative of his company New York called our office, and I was hired to present a motivational program at one of their sales meetings. When I met the owner in person, he told me, "I was impressed with your persistence. Someone from your office kept calling me for years, and didn't give up." Sure, we put up with years of failure. But it was all worth it when we made that sale. Key questions: if you aren't getting the results you want or have been discouraged by failures, ask yourself these questions. Do I have an unrealistic timetable? Maybe you expect to skip steps and succeed on a grand scale immediately. Success is usually achieved by climbing one step at a time. And you don't always know how long it will take to advance to the next level. So, be patient with yourself and resist the temptation to compare your progress with that of anyone else. You'll advance faster than some, slower than others. Maintain a great attitude, take action, make adjustments, and the results will come. Am I truly committed? Do you have a burning desire to achieve your goal? It's essential that you be willing to do whatever it takes and that you banish any thought of giving up before you accomplish your objective. Of course, it's much easier to be committed when you love what you're doing. Therefore, go after those goals you're passionate about, and harbor no thought of quitting. Do I have too many discouraging influences? Unsuccessful results can be frustrating. That's why we need to surround ourselves with people who support and believe in us. If you hang around with negative people who are highly critical or who are doing very little in their own lives, your energy and enthusiasm will be drained. Therefore, develop a network of individuals to encourage and coach you toward success. Am I preparing to succeed? Success in any endeavor requires thorough preparation. Are you taking steps to learn everything you can? Would you like me to give you a formula for success? It's quite simple. Double your rate of failure. Thomas J. Watson. About accomplishing your goal? This means reading books, listening to tapes, taking courses and networking with highly successful people in your field. It might mean finding a mentor or getting a coach to work with you. Successful individuals are always sharpening their skills. Those getting unsuccessful outcomes often do the same things over and over without making necessary adjustments. So, be coachable. Accept the fact that you don't already know it all and find resources to keep you on track and moving forward. Am I truly willing to fail? Face it, failure is inevitable. You will encounter defeat prior to succeeding. In our hearts, we know our most valuable lessons come from our failures. Failure is essential for growth. Look failure squarely in the face and see it as a natural part of the success process. Then, failure will lose its power over you. The truth is, when you're not afraid to fail, you're well on the way to success. Welcome failure as an unavoidable yet vital component in the quest to achieve your goals. Turning failure into success. Your failures are learning experiences that point out the adjustments you must make. Never try to hide from failure, for that approach guarantees that you'll take virtually no risks, and achieve very little. As Beverly Sills once remarked, you may be disappointed if you fail, but you are doomed if you don't try. No, you won't close every sale. And you won't make money on every investment. Life is a series of wins and losses, even for the most successful. The winners in life know that you crawl before you walk and you walk before you run. And with each new goal comes a new set of failures. It's up to you whether you treat these disappointments as temporary setbacks and challenges to overcome, or as insurmountable obstacles. If you make it your business to learn from every defeat and stay focused on the end result you wish to attain, failure will eventually lead you to success. Lesson 12: Networking that gets results. You can get everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Zig Ziglar. When I met freelance copywriter Stu Kamen in the fall of 1990, it set off an incredible chain reaction that would forever impact my business. Let me share with you what happened. In 1992, Stu was a contributing writer with Think and Grow Rich newsletter. At Stu's suggestion, that newsletter ran a front-page story about me and how I went from being a lawyer to a motivational speaker. At the same time, I entered into an agreement with that newsletter where they would sell my Attitude is Everything merchandise through their publication. Thousands of items were sold. Think and Grow Rich newsletter also began to run some of my own articles in their publication. As a result, I got calls from their readers and was hired for several speaking engagements. I also got a letter from one of their subscribers named Jim Donovan, who lived in New York at that time. We became good friends. Jim referred me to Inti Publishing and Resource Books, the publisher of the book you're now holding in your hand. If you're positive and enthusiastic, people will want to spend time with you. Jeff Keller way. Jim went on to write 2 great self-help books of his own: Handbook to a Happier Life and This Is Your Life, Not a Dress Rehearsal. And all of these great things happened because I tapped into Stu Kamen's network, and then the Think and Grow Rich newsletters network, and then Jim Donovan's network. The power of networking is nothing short of awesome. If given the choice, wouldn't you like to succeed sooner rather than later? Well, networking is a way to leverage your own efforts and accelerate the pace at which you get results. After all, the more solid relationships you build, the greater your opportunities for success. The benefits of networking: while your success certainly starts with you, it grows to higher levels as a result of your associations and relationships with people. Simply put, you can't succeed on a grand scale all by yourself. That's why networking is so important. For the purposes of this lesson, let's define networking as the development of relationships with people for mutual benefit. In the business arena, networking has the following benefits: generates new clients or business leads, increases employment opportunities, helps in finding the right people to fill critical positions, provides valuable information and resources, assists in solving problems in the personal realm. Here's what networking can do for you: enhance your social relationships by introducing you to new friends, help you to become acquainted with people of varying ethnic, cultural and philosophical backgrounds, provide valuable information and resources, contribute to your spiritual growth. Now that we know what networking can do, the question is, what can we do to enhance the effectiveness of our network? Let me pass along 16 techniques that I've found productive. To simplify matters, I've organized them into 4 separate, but related, categories: 1. Attitude and action, 2. Referrals, 3. Communication, and 4. Follow-up. Attitude and action. Project a winning attitude. When it comes to networking, attitude is everything. If you're positive and enthusiastic, people will want to spend time with you. They'll want to help you. If you're gloomy and negative, people will avoid you, and they'll hesitate to refer you to their friends and colleagues. Participate actively in groups and organizations. Effective networking and relationship building takes more than paying dues, putting your name in a directory and showing up for meetings. You must demonstrate that you'll take the time and make the effort to contribute to the group. What kinds of things can you do? For starters, you can volunteer for committees or serve as an officer or member of the board of directors. The other members will respect you when they see you roll up your sleeves and do some work. They'll also learn about your people skills, your character, your values, and last, but not least, your attitude. Let's get back to Stu Kamen for a moment. He wanted to build contacts within advertising agencies, so he joined the Long Island Advertising Club in 1994. Stu immediately began to attend the group's meetings. When they asked for volunteers for various projects, Stu raised his hand. He got actively involved. Within 6 months after joining, somebody approached him and said, "We hear good things about you. You're a hard worker and very energetic. Would you like to join our board of directors?" As you might guess, Stu gladly accepted. And within a few months, he began to see a significant increase in his business. In early 1999, Stu told me that well over 50% of his current business can be traced to people he met through the Long Island Advertising Club, proving that people can get big results in a short time by networking effectively. Serve others in your network. Serving others is crucial to building and benefiting from your network. You should always be thinking, how can I serve others, instead of what's in it for me. If you come across as desperate or as a taker rather than a giver, you won't find people willing to. Getters don't get, givers get. Eugene Bench help you. Going the extra mile for others is the best way to get the flow of good things coming back to you. How can you serve others in your network? Start by referring business leads or potential customers. In addition, whenever you see an article or other information that might be of interest to someone in your network, forward the material to that person. When I think of effective networkers, the first name that comes to mind is Mark LeBlanc. Mark gives presentations to business owners who want to grow their business and to salespeople who want to sell more of their products and services. I've referred many people to Mark. Why? He's a talented, service-oriented person who has gone out of his way to encourage me, and to help me build my business. Mark has put me in touch with people in his own network who are in a position to help me. He distributes my materials at his presentations. Mark is one of those people who just keeps giving, and giving, and giving. That's why people want to help Mark, and that's one reason why his own business is growing. As the Bible says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." That's the truth. Referrals: if you refer someone, make sure that the person mentions your name as the source of the referral. Be explicit. Let's assume you're about to refer John Smith to your graphic design Jane Jones. You might say to John, "Give Jane a call, and please tell her that I referred you." In some instances, you may even call Jane and let her know that John Smith will be contacting her. Then, the next time you see or speak to Jane, remember to ask if John called and how it turned out. You want to reinforce in Jane's mind that you're looking out for her and helping her to grow her business. Be selective. Don't refer every person you meet. Respect the time of those in your network. Referring unqualified leads will reflect poorly on you. Ask yourself whether or not a particular referral is really going to be of value to your network partner. Keep in mind that the key is the quality, not quantity, of the leads you supply. Communication: be a good listener. Have you ever been speaking to someone who goes on and on about himself and his business and never takes a moment to ask about you? We've all run into the me types, and they're the last people you want to help. So, in your conversations, focus on drawing other people out. Let them talk about their careers and interests. In return, you'll be perceived as caring, concerned, and intelligent. You'll eventually get your turn to talk about yourself. Sure, this is Dale Carnegie 101. But it works. Call people from time to time just because you care. How do you feel when someone calls you on the phone and says, "Hey, I was just thinking about you and was wondering how you're doing"? I'll bet you feel like $1,000,000. If that's the case, why don't we make these calls more often? Every now and then, make it a point to call people in your network simply to ask how they're doing and to offer your support and encouragement. That's right. Call just because you care and because that's the way you'd like to be treated. Every December, I pick up the phone and call certain clients I haven't spoken with for a long time. Many of these people haven't. You can succeed best and quickest by helping others to succeed. Napoleon Hill ordered anything from my company in years. My call is upbeat and my only agenda is to be friendly. I don't try to sell them anything. I appreciate the busyness they've given me in the past, and I just want to hear how they're doing, personally and professionally. If business comes from these calls, that's great. That's great. If business doesn't come from these calls, year after year, I do get business as a result of making these calls. Someone will say, I need to order more of those attitude is everything lapel pins, or our company is having a sales meeting in 6 months, and they may want you to do a presentation. Please understand that this isn't manipulation or a sales tactic on my part. I'm not expecting these people to give me business. I really care about how they're doing. Business is simply a byproduct of reconnecting with them. Take advantage of everyday opportunities to meet people. You can make excellent contacts just about anywhere, at the health club or online at the supermarket. You never know from what seed your next valuable relationship will sprout. When I go to the gym on the weekends, I always wear an attitude is everything shirt. It's a great icebreaker and people will come up to me to talk about attitude. It gives me an opportunity to learn about them and to tell them about my company. Treat every person as important, not just the influential ones. Don't be a snob. The person you meet, whether or not they're the boss, may have a friend or relative who can benefit from your product or service. So, when speaking to someone at a meeting or party, give that person your undivided attention. And please promise me that you won't be one of those who gazes around looking for more important people to talk to. That really bugs me. You're talking with someone and then he notices someone out of the corner of his eye, someone he deems more important than you. So he stops listening to you, and abruptly breaks away to start a conversation with that other person. Don't do that. Treat every person you encounter with dignity and respect. At meetings and seminars, make it a point to meet different people. Don't sit with the same group at every gathering. While it's great to talk with friends for part of the meeting, you'll reap greater benefits if you make the extra effort to meet new faces. In 1994, I was in Washington, D.C., to attend the annual convention of the National Speakers Association. At lunch, instead of sitting with some friends, I sat down at a table where I didn't know anyone. Sitting at that table was a woman named Joan Burge, and we struck up a conversation. Her company, New York, Office Dynamics, conducts excellent training programs for administrative office professionals. It turned out that Joan is also a big believer that attitude is everything. And, for the last 5 years, she has ordered my Attitude is Everything lapel pins and distribute them to some of the participants in her training programs. In addition, Joan often displays my literature at her programs, which has generated thousands of dollars in business for me. Most importantly, Joan has become a wonderful friend. I'm sure glad I didn't sit with my friends that day, as I would have missed out on a tremendous opportunity. Be willing to go beyond your comfort zone. For instance, if you have the urge to introduce yourself to someone, do it. You might hesitate, thinking that the person is too important or too busy to speak with you. Even if you're nervous, force yourself to move forward and make contact. You'll get more comfortable as time goes on. Ask for what you want. By helping others, you've now earned the right to request assistance yourself. Don't be shy. As long as you've done your best to serve those in your network, they'll be more than willing to return the favor. Follow up: send a prompt note after meeting someone for the first time. Let's say you attend a dinner and make a new contact. Send a short note as soon as possible explaining how much you enjoyed meeting and talking with him or her. Enclose some of your own materials and perhaps include information that might be of interest to this person, such as the name of a trade magazine and a subscription card. Ask if there's anything you can do to assist this individual. Be sure to send a note within 48 hours after your initial meeting so that it's received while you're still fresh in your contact's mind. Acknowledge powerful presentations or articles. If you hear an interesting presentation or read a great article, send a note to the speaker or writer and tell him or her how much you enjoyed and learned from their message. One person in 100 will treat every person you encounter with dignity and respect. Jeff Keller. Take the time to do this, be the one who does. I'm not saying that speakers and writers are special people who deserve to be worshipped. The point is, speakers and writers often have developed a huge network of people covering a variety of industries, a network you can tap into. When you receive a referral or helpful written materials, always send a thank you note or call to express your appreciation. Follow this suggestion only if you want to receive more referrals and more useful information. If you don't acknowledge that person sufficiently, he or she will be much less likely to assist you in the future. Send congratulatory cards and letters. If someone in your network gets a promotion, award, or celebrates some other occasion, for example, a marriage or birth of a child, write a short note of congratulations. Everyone loves to be recognized, yet very few people take the time to do this. Being thoughtful in this manner can only make you stand out. It's also appropriate to send a card or memorial gift when a family member dies. Building your network. The networking suggestions offered above are merely the tip of the iceberg. You should be able to come up with several new ideas of your own. How? By going to your library or bookstore and seeking out the many excellent books on networking, and by noticing what other people are doing and adapting their ideas in a way that suits you. Remember that networks are built over time and that significant results usually don't show up immediately. So be patient. Build a solid foundation of relationships and continue to expand and strengthen them. You'll have to put in a lot before you begin reaping the big rewards. One final point. Great networking skills are not a substitute for being excellent in your field. You might be a terrific PR person, but if you aren't talented at what you do and constantly learning and improving, your efforts will yield disappointing results. Now, go ahead. Select a few of these networking techniques and implement them right away. Get to work serving and improving your network. Then you will truly have an army of troops working to help you succeed. Conclusion. Change your attitude and you change your life. To change your circumstances, first start thinking differently. Norman Vincent Peale. November 16, 1998. Manila, Philippines. I just finished giving a presentation to people from more than 20 countries. What an incredible privilege. Dozens of people in the audience came up to introduce themselves and to thank me for coming to Manila to share these life-changing principles with them. When everybody had left the room, I was about to gather up all my things. But for some reason, I paused for a moment. I looked around this empty auditorium. 8,000 miles from my home. And I had to pinch myself, just to make sure I wasn't dreaming. I flashed back to 1985, when I sat in my den, negative and depressed. I hated my job as a lawyer and hadn't the slightest idea how I'd turn things around. Now, here I was in the fall of 1998 in the Philippines, giving a motivational seminar to people from all over the world. How did this happen? I thought to myself. The answer came to me loud and clear. I changed my attitude. You see, when you change your attitude, sparks fly in the universe. You're energized. You begin to see new possibilities. You move into action. You achieve extraordinary results. That's why I say when you change your attitude, you change your life. Now I'd be kidding you if I told you the last 14 years were just a string of successes. Far from it. I've had my share of defeats and setbacks along the way. But the success principles I've discussed in this book are what have given me the courage, the guidance, and the strength to keep moving forward. Take control of your life. I applaud you for taking the time to read this book. It shows that you're truly interested in developing your incredible potential. Yet, act as if it were impossible to fail. Dorothea Brand. Reading this book is only the first step to living the life you want to live. When you focus on these ideas and take action to implement them, you're on the way to creating some exciting breakthroughs in your life. You may have seen statistics that only about 5% of the population reaches a high level of success. Why is that? After 14 years of research, I'm convinced it comes down to this: it's the rare individual who applies the success principles discussed in this book on a daily basis. It's the rare individual who consistently maintains a positive attitude, knowing that his thoughts will become his reality. Attitude is everything. 123. It's the rare individual who watches the words he uses, knowing that he's programming his mind for success, mediocrity, or failure. It's the rare individual who has the guts to confront her fears, because that's where her potential will be developed by doing things she's afraid to do. It's the rare individual who looks for the silver lining in every dark cloud. And it's the rare individual who makes a commitment, follows through with a positive attitude, and has the persistence to get the job done. I challenge you to be one of those rare individuals. You have the potential to become more than you ever dreamed. You have greatness within you, and your attitude is the key to unlocking that potential. Changing my attitude changed my life. And if a better attitude can work miracles in my life, it can work miracles in yours. I'd like to share with you these words from Dr. Charles Swindoll, who captured the essence of attitude and how it dominates the direction of our lives. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude, to me, is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past, we cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. Pretty powerful words, aren't they? Do what Charles Swindoll suggests and play on the one string you have, your attitude. Now is the time to take control of your attitude. Now is the time to start creating miracles in your own life. Go ahead, believe in yourself. Have the courage and persistence to follow your dreams. And above all, never, never forget that attitude is everything. May God bless you on your journey.